You listen to Neil deGrasse Tyson, Richard Dawkins, and a lot of these guys. They all mock the idea of God and outwardly tell you, why would you live your life by an ancient book?
What would you say to some of the parents who are like, look, we're going to go ahead, we'll learn about evolution, but we also believe in creationism. What is the harm in learning the Bible's creation story?
Well, learning the story is fine. I mean, that's great, but it's not science. And tax dollars used for science education shouldn't be used to teach creationism as an alternative. Creationism is not right.
The notion of creationism, or in fact, look, Senator Marco Rubio, who's presumably a reasonably intelligent man, was asked, what's the age of the earth? And ultimately, either because he actually believed it or he was trying to appeal to some constituency, had to argue that it's a big mystery, that somehow we should teach kids both ideas that the earth is 6,000 years old and that it's 4.55 billion years old, which is what it is. If you think about that, somehow saying that, well, anything goes, we shouldn't offend religious beliefs by requiring kids to understand reality. That's child abuse.
It sounds very laudable to teach the controversy, to teach both theories, but there aren't two theories. There's only one theory around. There's only one game in town as far as serious science is concerned. Of course, you get negative reactions from creationists, but who cares about creationists? They don't know anything.
He's like primary atheist of the world. And so if you're going to talk about science and religion, you need people like that to find out, where are they thinking, where are they taking us, what's it all about? But we couldn't just feature Richard Dawkins. We need some other views here. And so we combed the landscape. And we found a Jesuit priest. This is the academic order of the Catholic Church. And we have with us Father Martin. Welcome to Star Talk.
Thank you very much.
All right. You, as a modern Catholic, have no problem with evolution.
Correct.
Correct. I can't say the same about other theologians who walk this earth. So what does that mean?
It means that
in the world, in politics, in all of this.
Sure. Well, it means that different Christians have different viewpoints on that. I'm a firm believer in evolution. There are some people who don't believe it. I'm not sure how you can't be convinced if you see the kind of archaeology and the sort of the kind of history of the world. But there they are. So I can't account for ignorance.
Okay, so not to put words in your mouth,
Sure.
but what you might be saying here in this conversation is that for religion to go forward and not be in conflict with science, it needs to embrace what science finds about the natural world and not jump in the face of the scientists and say, that conflicts with my interpretation of Scripture, therefore you must be wrong.
No, I agree. And I think most religious scientists, I'm not a religious scientist, would say that and would say, this
Yes,
is
they
helping,
would, by the way.
Yeah,
Yes.
This is helping me
The ones I
understand.
know.
Yeah, this is helping me understand God's beautiful world. And I think what happens sometimes is, religion gets caricatured. So obviously, if you're religious, you must not believe in evolution, which I think is
Most
false.
Well, it's certainly true for some. You're saying it's not true for all.
I'd say for a few.
When we come back, we're going to find out if you have to give up your religion to believe in evolution. Clearly, the good father here doesn't. But how about others? When Star Talk continues. So one of the great questions out there is, how do we get more religions or more people who are religious on board with the moving frontier of science? Recognizing that you don't have to give up your religion unless perhaps your religion requires that there was no evolution. If it requires it, maybe you got to sort of lose it. But
that's probably pretty few religions, right?
I would think so.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, right? I mean,
well, I hope so. I don't understand people who can't believe in evolution. I don't understand people who don't look at, the sort of carbon dating and things like that in fossils. I can't understand it. And I have a hard time understanding why people cannot accept the fact that God can work through evolution, that it's just as much of a miracle of creation if it takes 10 million years or 15 million years as if it took 7 days. So I don't understand that. We shouldn't say religious people think this or religious people think that, because it is a label that is applied to people and often applied to make them seem uneducated, insane, or just idiots. And as if you have to check your brain at the door.
If you add up all the begats in the book of Genesis, for example, you get an age for the earth. 6,000 years old, plus or minus a little. the universe is said to be exactly as old as the Earth. This is still the standard of Jewish, Christian, and Muslim fundamentalists, and is clearly reflected in the Jewish calendar. But so young a universe raises an awkward question. How is it that there are astronomical objects more than 6,000 light years away? It takes light a year to travel a light year, 10,000 years to travel 10,000 light years, and so on. When we look at the center of the Milky Way galaxy, the light we see left its source some 30,000 years ago. The nearest spiral galaxy like our own, M31 in the constellation Andromeda, is 2 million light years away. So we're seeing it as it was when the light from it set out on its long journey to Earth 2 million years ago. And when we observe distant quasars 5 billion light years away, we're seeing them as they were 5 billion years ago before the Earth was formed. They are almost certainly very different today. So if, despite this, we were to accept the literal truth of such religious books, how could we reconcile the data? The only plausible conclusion, I think, is that God recently made all the photons of light arriving on the Earth in such a coherent format as to mislead generations of astronomers into the misapprehension that there are such things as galaxies and quasars, and intentionally driving them to the spurious conclusion that the universe is vast and old. This is such a malevolent theology, I still have difficulty believing that anyone, no matter how devoted to the divine inspiration of any religious book, could seriously entertain it. Consider again that pale blue dot we've been talking about. Imagine that you take a good long look at it. Imagine you're staring at the dot for any length of time, and then try to convince yourself that God created the whole universe for one of the 10 million or so species of life that inhabit that speck of dust. Now take it a step further. Imagine that everything was made just for a single shade of that species, or gender, or ethnic or religious subdivision. We can recognize here a shortcoming, in some circumstances serious, in our ability to understand the world. Characteristically, we seem compelled to project our own nature onto nature. Man, in his arrogance, thinks himself a great work, worthy of the interposition of a deity. Darwin wrote telegraphically in his notebook, more humble, and I think truer, to consider him created from animals. Close quote. We're Johnny-come-latelys. We live in the cosmic boondocks. We emerged from microbes and muck. Apes are our cousins. Our thoughts and feelings are not fully under our own control. And on top of all this, we're making a mess of our planet and becoming a danger to ourselves. The trapdoor beneath our feet swings open. We find ourselves in bottomless free fall. If it takes a little myth and ritual to get us through a night that seems endless, who among us cannot sympathize and understand? We long to be here for a purpose, even though, despite much self-deception, none is evident. The significance of our lives and our fragile planet is then determined only by our own wisdom and courage. We are the custodians of life's meaning. We long for a parent to care for us, to forgive us our errors, to save us from our childish mistakes. But knowledge is preferable to ignorance. Better by far to embrace the hard truth than a reassuring fable. Modern science has been a voyage into the unknown, with a lesson in humility waiting at every stop. Our common sense intuitions can be mistaken. Our preferences don't count. We do not live in a privileged reference frame. If we crave some cosmic purpose, then let us find ourselves a worthy goal.
I want to make an important point. This is not all people in the world, this is Americans, religious people. It depends on which study you get. You ask, do you pray to a personal God? These numbers vary, but they're high and they're up around 90%. Okay? It might be 85. That's actually not important. That difference is not important for the point I'm about to make. It's high, okay? In the West, in America, 90%. Okay? What percentage of educated people are religious? The number drops. I'm talking about graduate degrees here. Among all people with masters and PhDs, the religiosity drops. Somewhere around 60%, might be 65. The point is, it drops with education level. Now let's bring in scientists. How about what percentage of scientists in America are religious? You average over all the branches, it's about 40%, maybe 35%. In there's a range, of course. Biologists, physicists, astrophysicists are lower. The sort of engineers and mathematicians are higher. So it averages out to about 40%. So this looks like scientists are 40% down from 90% from the general public. But that's the wrong, no, it's 40% down from 60% because all scientists have graduate degrees. So the graduate degree in any subject gets you halfway there. The science is the increment from the educated degrees. I mean, from the all educated people. That takes it down to 40%. Now you go to the elite scientists. This is a well-known number. 7% are religious, claiming a personal God to whom they pray and intervene in their lives. I submit to you that with the current atheist fervor that has taken on over the past several years, I would say the modern atheists they're called, launched by the Dawkins book and the Hitchens book and the Sam Harris book and the like. And I was just in Borders recently, couldn't believe it. Sorry I didn't have a camera. Borders books, there it was. A section called Atheism. It was like, I'd never seen that before. It's like, okay. There it was. They had enough critical mass of books to make a section. So, here's my problem, here's my concern. When you're educated, and you understand how physics works, and you're mathematically literate, and you understand data, and you understand experiment, and you go up to someone who doesn't have that training, and they are religious, and you ask them, why are you religious and believing in invisible things that influence your life? What's wrong with you? Okay? That's unfair. It's not only unfair, it's disrespectful for the following reason. Until that number is 0, you've got nothing to say to the general public. These are scientists among us in the National Academy of Sciences who are religious and pray to a personal God, and I know some of them. And you're fighting the public for the religious beliefs? Figure that one out first, because maybe there's an asymptote. Maybe you can't change everybody. Maybe that's telling us something. Maybe there's something in the brain wiring that positively prevents some people from ever being an atheist. And if that's the case, in a way, they can't help it. And you'll never know it because you're not one of them. So I ask you, first, for compassion with the public, but you should target your exercise and your experiments on understanding that number. Because that's not 0. Yes, it's low, but it's not 1%, it's not 0.5% or 0.1%. It is 7%. 1 out of 14. If this were the National Academy of Sciences with 900, you'd have 100 people in here. Did I do that right? 7%? 65. Carry the 2. What, 65? Sorry, 7 times 9, yeah, so 6, yeah. You have 65 people in here among elite scientists praying to their personal God. So, now, I don't care. I actually personally don't care what people want to believe. This country was founded on religious freedoms. That's how that happened, okay? And what enabled the religious freedoms is that our Constitution makes no mention of God at all, which means nobody's God reigns supreme over anybody else's. And therein is the religious freedom that attracted all these waves of immigrants for centuries. And so, I don't have an issue with what you do in the church. But I'm going to be up in your face if you're going to knock on my science classroom and tell me that I got to teach what you're teaching in your Sunday school, because that's when we're going to fight. And I'm going to tell you something. There's no tradition of scientists knocking down the Sunday school door, telling the preacher that might not necessarily be true. That's never happened. There are no scientists picketing out front of churches. There's been this coexistence forever. So to have the religious communities knocking down the science door, there's something wrong there. And I think back to Al-Ghazali and the 12th century and the fall of that intellectual empire. And it's got me scared in America. Do you remember that case in Jersey where this middle school kid, forgive me, I forgot his name, I met him, Matthew LeClaire, do you remember this? In his history class, the teacher was saying that Jesus is the only one and true Savior, and Christianity is the only one and true religion, and if you were not, you were damned to hell. And he pointed to a Muslim girl and said she's damned to hell already, it's too late for her, and that Noah's Ark carried dinosaurs on it, and that the Big Bang and evolution are not scientific. He recorded this and submitted it to the New York Times. And it became a whole expose on this teacher. And then what happened? The ACLU came out, and separation of church and state, and it's a violation of the separation of church and state. And I said, I don't normally get in those arguments, because I got the universe to worry about. I let that go. But then I thought, no, people are missing something here. It's not a case of a separation of church and state. It's not. It's not. Okay? I looked at the comments and the transcript. I ignored the part about Jesus being your Savior. I ignored the part about Christianity being the one and true religion. I paid attention to the statement that Noah's Ark carried dinosaurs, okay? And so, I wrote a letter to the editor of the New York Times that they printed, and I will read to you. To the editor, people cited violation of the First Amendment when a New Jersey school teacher asserted that evolution and the Big Bang are not scientific and that Noah's Ark carried dinosaurs. The case is not about the need to separate church and state. It's about the need to separate ignorant, scientifically illiterate people from the ranks of teachers. Let's fix this one once and for all, okay? Let's just fix this, okay? Once and for all. Yes, Einstein and God were like that, okay? It's like God doesn't play dice with the universe. It turns out God does. That's what quantum mechanics is all about. He was wrong about that, okay? He mentions God a lot. And so all the religious people like claiming him because he's famous and he's unimpeachably smart. And if you get famous, smart scientists in your camp, that boosts your camp, okay? But let's straighten this out once and for all. Here's a letter from Albert Einstein in his later years, 1954, a couple of years before he died. It was, of course, a lie, what you read about my religious convictions. A lie which is being systematically repeated. I do not believe in a personal God, and I've never denied this, and have expressed it clearly. If something is in me which can be called religious, then it's the unbounded admiration for the structure of the world so far as our science can reveal it. Case closed. So anyone says Einstein was religious, just show them this letter, okay?
46% of Americans believe the story of Genesis is true. So
It's amazing. It's astonishing.
I know that the world was created in 6 days.
Here again, another quote from your book. Inherent in the rejection of evolution is the idea that your curiosity about the world is misplaced and your common sense is wrong. This attack on reason is an attack on all of us. What do you mean by it's an attack on all of us?
In other words, everything that the rest of us do as taxpayers and voters and citizens of the world, everything that we do to improve the lives of other people or to improve our own quality of life, to build buildings that rely on our understanding of physics, to build sewer systems that rely on our understanding of gravity, that all of this is inconsistent with this other world view that where they take the Bible literally, as written in English, by the way, take that literally and deny everything else that gives us all these wonderful things that our society provides, food, clothing, and shelter. So when you are attacking our science or our ancestors who made these discoveries about nature, you are, for me, attacking all of us who embrace it and use it and want to make the world better.
So are you urging people to give up on the idea of creationism?
Oh, yeah, please.
I get it. You don't want the schools teaching this stuff, or if they do it in religion class, that's one thing, but certainly not in science class. But I guess alongside that, do you also need parents to stop teaching this to their kids as well? Because obviously, if you're from a religious family, presumably you're going to be hearing this at home as well as at school, yes?
I just really want to, in general, it's not religion that's teaching creationism. It's a special subset of a certain religion that's teaching creationism. I just really want to say it's not a broad brush on that. And so, yeah, our problem is when parents are brought up with this extraordinary worldview, they bring their kids up with these extraordinary worldviews, and it's really hard to change when you're a grown-up. I mean, it's harder than quitting smoking or what have you. And so our trouble is, for a society that needs as many scientifically literate people as possible, and I'm not talking about the United States, I'm talking about the world, Canada especially, we need as many people who are literate, who can make good decisions as voters about what's reasonable, what's a good thing to do, what's not a good thing to do, what we need to put our resources into, what we should not put our resources into. We need those people to understand science well enough to make good decisions. And of course, we need engineers and scientists to change the world.
The amazing thing is that every atom in your body came from a star that exploded. And the atoms in your left hand probably came from a different star than your right hand. It really is the most poetic thing I know about physics. You are all stardust. You couldn't be here if stars hadn't exploded, because the elements, the carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, iron, all the things that matter for evolution weren't created at the beginning of time. They're created in the nuclear furnaces of stars, and the only way they can get into your body is if the stars were kind enough to explode. So forget Jesus. The stars died so that you could be here today. Okay? And anyway.
One can't help asking, why are you so obsessed with God?
Well, I noticed that you brought up the question of God and I didn't. When you ended A Brief History of Time with "For then we shall know the mind of God," I suspect that you were using God in a sort of Einsteinian sense, a euphemism for the mystery at the root of the universe, that which we don't understand. But most people use the word God for a person, God as an answer to scientific questions. Then I think it is scientifically pernicious, because it distracts people away from the hard work of answering scientific questions. It's just too easy to say, oh, God did it, therefore we don't need to answer the question. 40%, 45% of the American people believe literally in Adam and Eve, believe literally that the world is only 6,000 years old. I mean, that's a shocking figure, and you can't duck out of it by saying, oh, sophisticated theologians don't believe it. Unfortunately, what sophisticated theologians believe isn't really relevant to what the majority of Christians do believe. When we're talking about moral philosophy, when we're talking about the origin of the cosmos, when we're talking about the origin of life, when we're talking about why we all exist, there is no reason whatever why we should treat the writings of scribes in whatever it was, 800 BC, 600 BC, as being particularly wise. We could listen to Confucius, we could listen to the Buddha, there are all sorts of people we could listen to, and we could listen to modern philosophers as well and modern scientists as well. Once again, I come back to the point, there is nothing special about the Bible. If the Bible has any chance of lasting, it had better stick with the King James Version, because once it gets turned into modern English, everybody can read it and see what nonsense it is.
You know, they mock the Bible, they mock God, they say there's no need of it, you know, and Dawkins is like belligerent against it. He's like Captain Atheist.
You don't believe that the Earth is round only if you're an astronaut. You don't believe Napoleon existed only if you're a historian. You believe these things because they're facts proved by evidence. Evolution is also a demonstrated fact. The truth really is out there. It's not a matter of opinion.
You have written that God is a psychotic delinquent invented by mad, deluded people.
No, I didn't say quite that. I said something rather better than that.
Oh, well, please tell us what you said. Please tell us what you said.
Well, I would have to read it from the book.
No, please.
The God of the Old Testament is arguably the most unpleasant character in all fiction. Jealous and proud of it, a petty, unjust, unforgiving control freak, a vindictive, bloodthirsty ethnic cleanser, a misogynistic, homophobic, racist, infanticidal, genocidal, filicidal, pestilential, megalomaniacal, sadomasochistic, capriciously malevolent bully.
So that's what you think of God?
Yeah.
How about if people believed in a God of infinite lovingness and kindness and forgiveness and generosity, sort of like the modern day God? Why spoil it for them? Why not just let them have their fun and enjoy it?
I mean, I don't want to spoil anything for anybody. I write a book, people can read it if they want to. I believe that it is a liberating thing to free yourself from primitive superstition.
So religion is a primitive superstition?
Oh, I think it is, yes.
So you believe it's liberating to tell people that there is no God?
I think a lot of people, when they give up God, feel a great sense of release and freedom.
Well, then who did create the heavens and the earth?
Why do you use the word who? You see, you immediately beg the question by using the word who.
Well, then how did it get created?
Well, by a very slow process.
Well, how did it start?
Nobody knows how it started. We know the kind of event that it must have been. We know the sort of event that must have happened for the origin of life.
And what was that?
It was the origin of the first self-replicating molecule.
Right, and how did that happen?
I told you we don't know.
So you have no idea how it started?
No. Nor has anybody.
Nor has anyone else.
Evolution is a fact. It's documented by science.
Right, and how did that happen?
I told you we don't know. Believe these things because they're facts proved by evidence. Evolution is also a demonstrated fact. The truth really is out there. It's not a matter of opinion.
So you have no idea how it started?
No. Nor has anybody.
Nor has anyone else. What do you think is the possibility that intelligent design might turn out to be the answer to some issues in genetics or in evolution?
It could come about in the following way. It could be that at some earlier time, somewhere in the universe, a civilization evolved by probably some kind of Darwinian means to a very, very high level of technology and designed a form of life that they seeded onto perhaps this planet. Now, that is a possibility and an intriguing possibility. And I suppose it's possible that you might find evidence for that if you look at the details of biochemistry, molecular biology. You might find a signature of some sort of designer.
Wait a second. Richard Dawkins thought intelligent design might be a legitimate pursuit?
And that designer could well be a higher intelligence from elsewhere in the universe. Well, but that higher intelligence would itself have had to have come about by some explicable or ultimately explicable process. It couldn't have just jumped into existence spontaneously. That's the point.
So Professor Dawkins was not against intelligent design, just certain types of designers, such as God.
Many people are extremely illogical.
You know, they mock us as lowbrow, idiots for believing the things that we do. Let's put it in perspective. They think they came from monkeys, okay? I don't care how many letters they have after their name. These guys go to school, they read books, they come out believing they came from monkeys, and then they have the audacity to say that we're the stupid ones.
Who's the more foolish, the fool or the fool who follows it? Don't insult my intelligence.
I'm laughing at the superior intellect.
Yes, indeed I am. You may mock me, but I'm laughing at you.